Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition. Have you ever wanted to play a very long RPG but didn't want to put in the time? Well, this is one solution to that. An abbreviated video game. Think of it like a book on tape or the cliff notes of a video game. This originally came out on the mobile platform, and it's really depressing that we have to get this version of the game. And it's even more depressing that at times it runs terribly, but more on that later. I played about 20 hours of Final Fantasy 15 before I got bored with it. I really disliked the combat in it. Now, I'm a little bit biased since I like turn-based combat, but if my Tales of Vesperia review proves, I can enjoy a game with action fighting as long as it has an interesting enough story. The problem is the story isn't that great in Final Fantasy 15 from the 20 hours I played it. That's even more of a problem in this one since the story is basically what this is all about. A great deal of the side quests and the fun are gone in this. However, I have to admit, I did like the combat better in this one. It was less chaotic. Even though this is a mobile port of the game, you would think the Switch would be able to run this without a problem. But this isn't true, as there is noticeable pop-in, and the action starts to slow down when there's too many things on the screen at a time. And that's just crazy! Why is it pushing the Switch's processing power? There isn't that much going on. This title is basically on rails. You can decide to take a slightly different path sometimes. However, this has to be done in a very limited area. If you're coming into this thinking it's going to be an open world like the original game, you're going to be sorely disappointed. All the story beats are here, but they're all dumbed down. Like, for example, the driving sections, which took a great deal of time in the original game. Now they're just slightly interactive cutscenes. You can move your car back and forth and that's it. Or you could do nothing and just let the car drive itself. On the very rare occasion where a car would be driving on the opposite side, if you tried to ram into it, it would just turn out of the way every time. Even if it meant phasing through a railing. If it wasn't for the character moments in the car, I would wonder why they're even bothering to adding this into the game. The characters look incredibly creepy. They have dead eyes and never move their mouths. Who thought it was a good idea to have characters with black holes for eyes? They look like they have no soul and they're ready to absorb you into their consciousness. Now let's get into the one thing that I liked, the combat. Sure, it was hack and slash, but it was easier to follow than the original game. You could do normal attacks or more powerful attacks that had cooldown timers. I liked the way the combat didn't feel too overwhelming most of the time. Sure, some of the boss fights went on way too long, but at least it felt like I had some control over the action. Unlike the original game where I was constantly feeling like I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just kind of button mashing, hoping that the encounter would be over quickly. The only thing I didn't like was the magic casting. You can absorb magic from rocks, and you can use it to fire off different kinds of magic spells. You can only hold one spell at a time, and you can only use it once. I hated this all or nothing gameplay. It did a great deal of damage, and I would often save it up because I never wanted to use it. Sometimes it would be a very limited resource, and others it would just be refilled quite often. Why couldn't it just recharge like your other attacks? I do wish you could lock on enemies. I would often switch to different creatures when I was fighting, only because they were moving around a lot. It was hard to focus on just one, and I can't imagine anyone being able to play this on the mobile platform with touch controls. This needed a joystick to move around. There's a sphere grid skill progression system. You have AP points to spend every time you level up, and those make the fights easier. They give you quite a few options to change up your character. Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition was not great. It cuts out some of the best parts of the game, which was the open world. Sure, if you like the story in the original game, it's mostly here, but all the emotional weight is gone. It feels paper thin, and the abridged way it is presented kinda sucks. The only thing I liked about it was the combat, and even that had problems with the fights going on too long. This is normally $30, and no, you should not get it for that price. For what this is, that is a crazy price to ask. I really don't know why anyone would ever need or want to play this. Maybe if it comes down to $10 one day. But even then, I don't see most people enjoying this. So you should just skip it.